I never imagined I'd walk into that world again, let alone with 4 shadows trailing behind me, each carrying a piece of the past I was supposed to bury. The Elysian grand shimmered like a dream that evening. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to the Los Angeles skyline, the rooftop draped in ivory silk, the air scented with peonies and wealth. The annual Rothman Global Education Gala was the kind of event that existed only in the glossy pages of elite magazines. For most, it was an evening of celebration. For me, it was a reckoning. I stepped out of the elevator, my heels silent against a marble, but every step echoed. Noah walked on my right, hands in his pockets like he didn't belong here. Ava clutched her small clutch with both hands, posture perfect. Julian's eyes scanned the room as if he'd been sent here to memorize every weakness. Sophie held my hand, just tightly enough. We didn't blend in. We weren't trying to. Heads turned the moment we arrived, some in admiration, some in curiosity, and then there was his gaze. It didn't just look at me, it sliced. Daniel Rothman stood across the ballroom, tuxedo pressed, charm practiced, but his eyes failed him. He blinked once, then again, staring at me like the universe had turned itself inside out. Then his gaze fell to Noah, Ava, Julian, Sophie. It lingered on each face longer than the last. I stopped walking. His face had barely changed. The salt in his hair was new. Eyes scanning Noah's pale gray eyes, Ava's sharp cheekbones, Julian's jawline, Sophie's crooked smile. Then, barely above a whisper, "They're mine." I held his gaze, firm and unwavering. "They're ours." He blinked, and for the first time in 17 years I saw something I never thought he was capable of, fear. Noah stepped forward, folding his arms. "Whether you believe it or not is irrelevant. Truth doesn't ask for your permission." Daniel looked like a man drowning in champagne and disbelief. I tilted my head. "You said I couldn't be a mother, and yet here we are." The music played on, the room glittered, but in that moment Daniel Rothman was no longer the host of the night. He was a man unraveling in front of everything he once left behind. 17 years ago, the man who once promised to love me through sickness and sorrow packed his bags without even closing the bedroom door behind him. Back then, I was Vivian Rothman, wife of the rising star in venture philanthropy. Our wedding was featured in a lifestyle magazine. People whispered words like power couple and legacy family when we walked into rooms. I thought we were unstoppable. I thought he believed that too. For 2 years we tried. I charted every cycle, scheduled every appointment, endured every invasive procedure with quiet hope. Each month ended with a negative test, and Daniel's silence grew louder. I saw the shift before he ever spoke it. The way he stopped holding my hand in waiting rooms. The way he'd look past baby aisles like they were just clutter. The way he started working late and coming home later. Then, one Thursday afternoon after my final appointment, I walked into our kitchen to find him sitting stiffly at the counter, sipping cold coffee like it was whiskey. He didn't look up, just said, "We need to talk." No preamble, no hesitation. I stood there, still clutching the clinic paperwork. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "I've always wanted a family, Vivian, a real one." The word real hung in the air like rot. "You think I'm not a real family because I can't give you a child?" My voice cracked, but I didn't let it break. He finally looked at me. His face wasn't cruel, it was empty. That made it worse. "You're amazing, Viv. But you know this isn't the life we imagined." "No, it's the life I kept fighting for, even when you started giving up." He stood, slowly, like he was preparing to leave a meeting. "I think it's better if we both move on." And just like that, the man I married walked out of our marriage as if it were a business deal gone stale. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stood there while the door clicked shut and silence filled the house like water in a sinking ship. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal papers, closed blinds, and automated calls from fertility clinics asking if I wanted to schedule follow-ups. Daniel didn't even stay long enough to help cancel them. To the world, I disappeared. I left the agency I co-founded, changed my number, moved to a rental house on the edge of Santa Monica. I told no one, not even my sister, because when shame sits with grief, it's easier to believe you somehow deserved it. But grief doesn't stay grief forever. Sometimes it hardens into something else. Resolve. One night, I sat on the floor of my kitchen, surrounded by silence and unopened mail, and whispered to myself, "You are not broken. You are not finished." That was the night I started researching. Stem cell innovation, reproductive breakthroughs, quiet whispers about a clinic in San Diego working on something radical, something called novogenesis. I didn't know what I would find. I just knew I wasn't done yet. Daniel had made his choice. Now it was time I made mine. The clinic didn't advertise. No glossy pamphlets. No smiling stock photos of babies in baskets. Just a whisper passed between desperate women, and a phone number that rang twice before a calm voice answered. Pacific Regan Lab, this is Dr. Miriam Cho's office. I remember my voice trembling when I gave my name. I didn't have a referral, just a last sliver of belief. Belief that science hadn't written its final word on me yet. They scheduled me for a preliminary consult 3 weeks later. San Diego was a quiet 3-hour drive from Santa Monica, but that day it felt like I was crossing into another world. One where failure didn't follow me like a second shadow. The building was tucked away behind a children's museum, with no signs, just a code-protected elevator and a sterile white hallway that smelled of lavender and antiseptic. Dr. Cho greeted me herself, a woman with sharp eyes and a gentleness that felt earned, not practiced. She read my file in silence, then looked up. "You've been told you're infertile, but have you been told your body is incapable of carrying a child?" I blinked. "Aren't they the same?" "They used to be," she said. "Not anymore." She introduced me to novogenesis, a clinical trial using reactivated ovarian stem cells to regenerate viable eggs. It was experimental, high risk, painful, and most of all, confidential. "You may not succeed," she said, "but if you do, you'll be the first." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the balcony of my apartment and stared at the ocean in the dark, waves rolling like quiet applause from the universe. I wasn't ready to hope again, but I was ready to fight. The first 6 months were a storm of injections, scans, biopsies, and hormone therapy that left me shaking, nauseous, and haunted by bruises blooming along my stomach, like purple reminders of what I might never get. There were nights I cried into my pillow, nights I doubted myself, nights I hated Daniel all over again. But I never stopped. Then, one cool morning in October, I got a call. I was sitting on the bathroom floor, hair wet, robe damp. Dr. Cho's voice was steady. "You're pregnant, Vivian." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I didn't tell anyone. Not family. Not friends. Not even the clinic receptionist who'd grown fond of my quiet nods. I carried that secret like a flame in my chest, sacred, fragile, and mine alone. 9 months later, I held Noah in my arms, born healthy, with a full head of dark hair and pale gray eyes that looked nothing like mine. 2 years later came Ava, then Julian, then Sophie. For miracles, each born with the odds stacked against them. I never told them about Daniel, not even his name. To them, their father was a ghost I refused to summon. And honestly, I didn't need to. I taught them how to plant basil in coffee cans, how to balance grocery budgets, how to take a deep breath before responding to cruelty. I taught them how to walk tall, even when life tried to make them small. They were my world, and I was enough. Still, on certain nights when the wind carried the scent of ocean salt and unfinished dreams, I'd wonder if Daniel ever looked back, if he ever thought about the woman he left behind, and the family he didn't even know he abandoned. But I never went looking, because I wasn't interested in dragging the past forward. I was waiting for it to catch up on its own. Daniel didn't sleep that night, not a single minute. After I walked away with 4 living, breathing refutations of everything he believed to be true, he stood in the middle of that ballroom like a man struck by lightning, not wounded, just empty. He didn't even say goodbye to his guests. He left before dessert was served, before the keynote speech he was supposed to deliver. His driver found him slumped in the back seat, glassy-eyed, gripping the edge of his tuxedo like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Back at his penthouse he paced, poured a drink, didn't touch it, poured another, still didn't drink. Then, finally, just past 2 a.m., he picked up his phone. "Mason," he said. His voice was raw, like he hadn't spoken since the moment I left the gala. I need you to look into something, into someone." Mason had been Daniel's personal assistant for over a decade, discreet, loyal, and ruthlessly efficient. "I need everything you can find about Vivian Carter, starting from 2007. Medical records, financials, anything that connects her to reproductive programs, especially anything confidential." Mason didn't ask questions. He never did. "Understood, sir." Daniel didn't sleep after that either. He sat at his desk, watching the skyline shift from night to day, waiting for the past to become searchable. Just before noon, the call came. "I found something," Mason said. "A project called Novogenesis." She was listed under a confidential donor number, but I matched dates and lab transfers. She was one of the early human subjects, possibly the first successful trial case. Daniel sat straighter. Was she just a participant? Mason hesitated. "No, sir. She was more than that. She was a documented success." The lab reports were sealed, but I accessed Briarwood Medical Center's encrypted maternity files. 4 names, for births, all listed under her file within a 2-year period following her treatment. Daniel gripped the edge of his desk. "Whose children are they, Mason?" There was a pause. Then the assistant's voice dropped, solemn. "They're yours, sir. DNA confirmed. 99.97% paternal match." Daniel didn't respond. Not for minutes. He just sat there, staring at the digital profiles of 4 young adults. Noah, Ava, Julian, and Sophie, names he had never heard. Birthdays he never celebrated. Milestones he never witnessed. One screen showed an ultrasound from Briarwood dated 16 years ago. Tiny heartbeats flickering in grayscale. The kind of image that should have brought him joy. Instead, it brought silence and something colder. Regret. Real, choking, late to the party regret. He didn't feel betrayed. He felt disqualified. Because 17 years ago, when I needed strength, he brought absence. When I looked for partnership, he gave me pity. And now he knew what I had done without him. What he had missed because he chose to walk away from a future he didn't understand. Near midnight, still staring at Sophie's birth certificate, he whispered, "I left before anything had even begun." And for the first time since he built his empire, Daniel Rothman wasn't thinking about legacy. He was thinking about what it meant to be left behind. 3 days after the gala, my doorbell rang. I didn't need to check the peephole. I already knew who it was. I opened the door slowly. There he stood, not in a tuxedo this time, but in a crumpled gray shirt, tie half-stuffed in his coat pocket, face pale like he hadn't slept in days. The man who once measured power and posture now looked human. I didn't say a word, just stepped aside. He hesitated, then entered. My home wasn't grand. A modest craftsman tucked between trees in Santa Monica, the smell of sea air and black coffee always hanging somewhere in the background. This was where my children had grown up, where I had rebuilt something resembling peace. He stood awkwardly in the living room, eyes roaming over photos on the wall. Birthdays, hiking trips, bad haircut years, all absent of him. Then they came. Noah first. Calm, unreadable, stepping down the stairs with measured grace. Then Ava, arms crossed, gaze sharp as ever. Julian followed behind her, his walk slower, more calculating. Sophie emerged last, holding a steaming mug of chamomile tea until she saw him. She froze. The cup trembled. "Hi," Sophie said finally. "Not cold. Not warm. Just real." Daniel nodded. "Hello." They didn't move. They didn't invite him to sit. So he stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by the life he had never been a part of. He took a breath. "I know I don't have the right, but I can't keep living without facing this. I need to know. I need to be heard." Julian stepped forward, arms folded. "Heard for what? So you feel better about leaving before we were even born?" Daniel swallowed. "No, not for that. I just need to explain." Noah's voice came low and firm. "You didn't know about us, but you knew Mom. You knew the kind of person she was. You really think if she wanted to become a mother, she wouldn't find a way?" Daniel looked at the floor. "I didn't think she'd ever—" "Don't finish that sentence," Ava cut in. "You already did enough thinking for all of us." A long pause followed. Then Sophie, of all people, stepped forward. Her voice was small, but her words sharp. "If you had known there was a chance, even a tiny one, would you have stayed?" The room stilled. Daniel looked at each of them, then at me, then out the window, where the garden lights shimmered against the dusk. He turned back slowly. "I want to say yes. I want to say I would have stayed and fought for it. But the truth is, back then I was scared. I didn't know how to handle not being in control. And I chose the easier road." Noah gave a single, nearly invisible nod. Julian's eyes didn't soften, but they stopped narrowing. Sophie placed her tea on the table. Ava stared at Daniel with the same face she made when her math teacher once tried to gaslight her over a grading mistake. Calm, unforgiving. Then she asked quietly, "And what do you choose now?" Daniel looked at them as if memorizing. "Now, I choose not to run, even if I'm never forgiven, even if all I get is distance. I choose to stay." Noah stepped forward, almost chest to chest with the man who shared his blood but not his memories. Showing up doesn't undo anything, but it does mean something if you keep showing up. I watched them, my children, standing not as victims, but as witnesses, not begging for a father, just demanding accountability. And for the first time since that doorbell rang, I spoke. "If you came here hoping to be welcomed," I said, my voice calm, "I can't promise that. But if you came to take responsibility, this door won't be locked." Daniel nodded. And for a moment, I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Not ambition, not pride, not apology, but willingness. Daniel didn't try to call. He didn't send flowers. No grand gestures. No guilt-soaked letters or long-winded apologies. Just a quiet message, 3 days later. "If any of you are free, I'll be at the little bookstore near campus around 4. They have a poetry section. Thought maybe one of you liked that." No pressure. No expectation. He was just there. Noah was the first to show up. He didn't announce himself. She texted a single line. "Bus stuck. You free?" 12 minutes later, Daniel pulled up with an umbrella and a jacket in the front seat. She climbed in without a word. The car was quiet except for the windshield wipers. Before getting out, she left a folded napkin in the glove box. "Thanks for coming. I didn't interfere. I watched, like a woman standing at the edge of a quiet river, letting each of them choose which bridge to cross in their own time." Sometimes Daniel sat at the kitchen table, helping Sophie with her science presentation. Other nights, he played chess with Noah under the porch light. Ava once invited him to a student gallery. Julian didn't chase him off the porch anymore. He didn't ask for my attention, never tried to reclaim his old title. He just existed in the spaces they allowed him to fill. Not a father, not yet, but a presence. And sometimes that's where healing begins, not with a declaration, but with consistency. It was late October when the truth finally found its voice. The wind carried a chill through the backyard, rustling the old maple leaves across the porch. I stood in the kitchen, watching Daniel help Sophie with a physics diagram, both of them bent over a sketch pad with matching frowns. There was something surreal about it, seeing him there in the world he once walked away from. Later that night, after the kids had gone to bed, I brewed 2 cups of tea and stepped out to the back porch. Daniel was already there, leaning on the railing, eyes lost in the shimmer of the distant city lights. I handed him a cup. He took it without a word. For a while we just stood there in the quiet. No guilt, no demands, just breath and memory. Then I asked softly, that day when you left me, was it really just about the children? He didn't answer right away. The wind stirred again, stronger this time, as if even it wanted to hear the truth. No, he finally said, voice low. That was the part one could say out loud. The part that wouldn't make me look small. I turned to face him fully. Then what was the truth? Daniel stared into his cup like it might hold the answer. I panicked, he said. I looked at our future, at the disappointment in your eyes, and I saw someone I didn't recognize. I wasn't the man I thought I'd be. You were strong. You held it together. You kept believing. And I felt like I was fading. He exhaled shakily. I didn't leave because you couldn't be a mother. I left because I didn't think I could be a man worthy of you if you didn't need saving. That broke something in me, not out of pain, but recognition. I remembered that feeling. The moment I watched him go and thought, if only he'd just said something real, we could have found a way. You didn't trust me to stand with you, I said, quiet but sharp. You assumed I'd only love you if we had everything figured out. But I didn't need a perfect husband, Daniel. I needed a partner. He nodded slowly. I know, and that's what I'll regret for the rest of my life. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was truthful. Then I lifted my gaze to the horizon, where the sky bled into bronze and dark blue. We can't go back, I said. Too much has changed. I'm not the woman who wrote your name in the margins of her planner. I'm someone else now. Daniel smiled faintly. I can see that. I turned to him one last time that night. But if what you're offering is real, if you're here for them, and not to fix your own guilt, then maybe we can become something else. Not what we were, but something different, something honest. He didn't rush to respond. He just looked at me with no defense, no performance, and nodded. And for the first time in 17 years, there was nothing broken between us. Just a fragile kind of peace, waiting to be built upon. The next Sunday, Daniel came back. Not to make amends, not to force connection, just to show up. He knocked gently and stood there with a small bakery box in one hand and a folder tucked under his arm. I opened the door and raised an eyebrow. They closed this place down 8 years ago, I said, staring at the name on the box. He smiled. I found the recipe online, tried to recreate it. The cookies were misshapen, slightly burned, but the gesture was unmistakable. He stepped inside, awkward but not tentative. The air between us had shifted, not clear, but not hostile either. The kids returned home from the movies just minutes later. Sophie spotted him first, then Ava, Julian, and Noah bringing up the rear. Each of them reacted differently. A blink, a pause, a deep breath, a small nod. He stood in the center of the room, his hands clasped together tightly, not in fear but restraint. I know I don't deserve anything from you, he began, voice steady, but I'd like the chance to get to know you, if you'll let me. Lucas, the ever-skeptic, raised an eyebrow. Get to know us how? Ice cream runs and holiday cards for the next 17 years. Daniel didn't flinch. If that's all I get, I'll take it. If it's nothing, I'll still be here. Noah stepped forward, eyes locked on him. You sure about that? Daniel nodded. I don't know where to start, but I know I don't want to walk away again, even if it's just to listen. A beat passed. Then Ava turned, grabbing her coat. Do you have a car? Daniel blinked. Yes. Then take us to Clover and Vine, the ice cream place. It's open till 8. Julian sighed. I'm only going because the pistachio there is actually good. Sophie grinned faintly. While slicing apples in the kitchen, Sophie asked softly, Do you ever regret it?" The room stilled. Daniel put the knife down, looked at her. "Yes," he said, "every single day." And in that moment, with no excuses, no shields, he finally became more than the man who left. He became the man who stayed.